It's usually the second video that gets up on YouTube. I get to be really chatty on the first one, and then I start divulging shit that I don't want to put up on YouTube. I created a Udio video. Udio is the udio.com. It's the now really popular site, supposedly, that everybody's going to create all the music that they would like to buy but doesn't exist from all the famous musicians that they like that are no longer making music, you know. And it works so well. And there are times when it's just works so crazily well, you just can't believe how in the world you came up with it in 2 hours. And it's that good. And supposedly Suno is just as good now. But I'm not even going to look at Suno because I don't know. And eventually I'll look at it and then I'll probably still go, I don't like Suno. And maybe there will be some more along the way. I think there's a Stable Diffusion music audio generator. Supposedly this thing uses the diffuser model like the AI image stuff does. I just can't imagine how that would work out because I kind of know what the diffusers do. They basically take a thing called a tensor, which is just a clever, it's really a mathematical term to describe just a abstract data type, a multi-dimensional array that's multi-dimensional on several levels. It can be 3D, it can be a 3D array. Actually, it could just be a one-dimensional array that has a dimension on it and another dimension. And then using modulus operators can turn it into any other dimension from that. I mean, that's what you would do if you were to create a 2D array that was made into a graphical image, is to run it through a modulus operator to come up with your rows. And then if you wanted to come up with the third dimension, you would do it in the same way, but you would use two modulus operators or something like that. That's how you would get your two Cartesian systems there. But the main thing is that you've got to have an array running off of whatever your data element is. If it's a voxel thing, I think with AI images, it's a voxel thing. It's something like that. But what it does is it stores special parameters or whatever about the individual elements in the tensor. The tensor would be like the block of marble that the AI would chisel at to get the form. And rather than making it all the value 1 or all the value 0, it makes it a random value. And that random value is like, the reason why it uses noise and it doesn't use whole ones or zeros is because in statistics you have a 50% chance of being correct if you fill your array or whatever it is that you're going to fill with information with random data. So random ones and zeros. You're going to be closer to the solution if you just fill it up with random flips of a coin, because that way it's either 50% wrong or 50% right. It's going to be in one or the other quadrants. And as you get closer and closer to what it is you want, it doesn't take you it takes you at least 50% less time than if you filled it up with ones or zeros or any other kind of set of numbers other than random data. And it has to be equiprobable random data. That is, that there's no loaded die. It gives you a random number, and if you were to go through the tensor, and if you were to tally down how many times the number ended up on a particular box, you would end up with the same amount of counts as with this is something they run people through whenever they take a programming courses. One of the first programming scripts you're given is to generate a random number after giving it the computer a seed value, which determines which sequence of random numbers are generated. It will give you random numbers, and then you're supposed to create like an array of, say, 10 boxes, 10 items, 10 variables, and fill up those 10 boxes. Usually it's 100 boxes. Fill it up with the accumulator of when the random number generator hit that box. So if it's 10 boxes, you do 1 through 10. And when the random number generator gives you a 1 through 10, you pick the box and you increment that box up by 1. And after 1,000 tries, you will get an even distribution of a pretty close approximation of an even distribution. So you would get 10% in each box. And that's how you determine if your random number generator is equiprobable, is whenever that distribution comes out. That means that the random number generator is based on the summation of several sine waveforms or something. It's cyclic, and that's how it generates its numbers. And the seed value just adjusts where things are associated in the cycle of producing random data. There probably would be a way to figure out what the numbers would be, but it'd be very difficult. The reason why you want the same sequence of numbers every time is so that you can test programs with the equiprobable data. So you can repeat your results. So you throw the random numbers at your program that you're trying to test. You throw in parameters in there that really don't belong in there. Like if your range was between 1 and 100, you give it max int to minimum int values to see if anything will cause it to break up. And you do that to everything in your program to see if anything will crack. And if something does crack, you can figure out what the values that went in were, and you can figure out, from that, how many, you can figure out what the values are. You can also figure out how many times it took for it to go through, because it may not even be those values. It may be something inside the program that is accumulating, and it's the accumulation of some value inside that's not being put in as a parameter that's crashing the program. But you need to be able to reproduce the same sequence of numbers, random number generator, and it needs to be equiprobable. And once you do that program, then you realize there's no way you're ever going to win at any of these gambling programs that they keep trying to sell you on your mobile apps. You'll come to the realization that the whole gambling industry uses these things, and you'd be right. And what they do is they just pick what earnings they want out of the program, and it's up to you to get the winnings from the very small smidgen of a sliver that they're permitting you to win. And that's where the odds come from. The odds of winning are this, and this. Believe me, you're never going to make any money off of them. They're going to make all your money, and the only thing that you would gamble for is fun. That's the only thing you could gamble for. And I understand a little bit about the reason why gamblers get excited and put their money back into the game is because their brain gives them a dopamine hit every time they think they're about to make money. So they put the money back into the game to keep the fix going. And these are also the people that I consider to be socially repressed because they could save themselves so much money just by masturbating to porn. But they won't do that because that's sad to them. So they would rather spend their money, maybe attract some girl, sit there and drink something, and ruin their life in a multiple number of ways, guarantee their early death or retirement or whatever it is they think they're going to get out of that. And um, I've never been. The only time I've been in a casino is to take advantage of the fantastic cafeterias they have, and that's what most people go to casinos for, is to eat the food, because the food is usually fantastic. Because the casinos have all the money in the world to throw at the cafeterias, and they're usually so cheap and fantastic to attract people into the casinos, hoping they're going to spend money in the casino. The idea is to come to the realization there is no way you're going to make any money off the casino, and it's easier if you're a programmer because then you know how to make those programs. And if you're crooked, you'll make those programs and make lots of money off the idiots who spend their money and are getting dopamine hits every time they think they're about to win something. And I I used to work with this guy who was autistic, and he had the ability to do all of those computations and stuff. And I would tell him, "There's no way you're ever going to make any money off of this." And there was nothing I could say to this autistic guy that would keep him from doing that every day. He'd take all of his tip money, all his winning, everything except the money he made off of working there, into those little scrape cards. And he would sit down on the floor with one tongue sticking out of his mouth and his favorite drink and snack by his side, going. It was so sad, and he made lots of money off of. I was a bagger. He was a bagger. He was going out with these affluent rich people, basically kissing their ass. He had memorized the license tags on every car, and he knew the people that gave him the biggest tips, and he would suck up to those people because they would give him, like, 10, 20, $50 or $100, whatever. He could be rich just off taking the tips and throwing them into the bank. But that's not what he did. He would go and throw them at these scribble cards and scrape stuff off. And the only thing I can imagine is that he lived with his parents. I live with my parents. He lived with his parents. His parents couldn't stand him, is my belief. And that's the reason why he was working at the store, because if he's alone for any length of time, he's a pain in the butt. And so they needed him to be doing something, and they sent him to work at that store. And the only thing I can imagine is they didn't give him any money, so the only money he ever had was the tip money, and he would throw that into gambling. And it was the saddest thing I had ever seen in my life. You think I'm sad? That guy is sad. And there were so many people in that store that worked there that was so sick of him. Eventually, during COVID, his parents took him out of the store, and that what happened was that our manager relocated him to a different store because they couldn't fire him, because he's that's the problem you have when you hire somebody who's got some sort of problem like that, is that there's no legal way you can kick them out unless they really do something wrong. And this guy was an overperformer, so all they could do is move him to another store, and that's what they did. Now, to give you some idea of just how bad I was, I mean, just how bad he was, is that what I was doing was I was getting depressed because I was a bagger and had a computer science degree and a minor in art, and I could go out and work at Pixar or whatever if people took me seriously. And they didn't take me seriously because I spent so much time not getting with a good work ethic, any kind of job in computer science. And people told me, if you trained up on Java and you did really well, you would have a good paying job. And I came to the realization that, well, I'd have a good paying job working for somebody that judges my output based upon Moore's law, that every year your output increases twice, and that if you're not perfect, then you're out the door. And so you have to learn everything in the world and be like on your toes all the time. I could do that, or I could be that in a grocery store. And that was before I mean, after not being able to get a position as a computer programmer because of this high threshold and all these things I had to jump through, all these hoops I had to jump through, the fact that they look at psychological evaluations and all the shit that they have to run people through to get a job, getting a job these days that's going to pay anything worthwhile. Um, and I was just so disgusted by that experience that I ended up falling for the job that you can't logically make any serious living at, which was as a bagger. And then just luckily, at some point, my mom found that I could get into this program that would make me money for the rest of my life, and I wouldn't have to work. And so I was just like, wow. So if I can figure out a way to make this work for me, I don't have to work. I don't have to get married. I don't have to children. I can live in an apartment. People think that it's sad, but it's not sad to me because I've always lived alone. I've never had a mate. I've had no reason to have children. And there are so many ways I could contribute to the world, but I'm from the perspective of a Christian, and Christians are painted with the perspective that the world is fucked. And the only thing you really want to do is try to help people stay out of poverty. But wanting to be top in the world, being a celebrity, even doing this is kind of worthless. Um, and so if you see any Christians that are all vain and, whatever, they're like trying to be, um, they're trying to be the top in their community and all this stuff. They're overachievers and stuff. We would say that they're trying to win. They're trying to get to heaven through works, and that's not how you do it. What you do is you just become a happier individual, and creating the works is just a result of your happiness. And that's the right way of producing works. The wrong way of doing it is by, as I said, just trying to satisfy everybody, and trying to be the hero, and trying to fix. I mean, it's okay to be a hero. It's worse whenever you're trying to make lots of money, because when you're making lots of money, um, it's at the cost of other people, and you're using that to somehow make yourself happy. But in the end, the reality is that you're attracting all the psychopaths, because the psychopaths don't give a shit about anyone. They don't give a shit about you. All they want to do is figure out how to separate you from your money. And I figured out that can't ever happen to me, because what are they going to get access to that's going to pay out for them? And they can't really, because I only get $3K a month for life. I don't get anything more or anything less. So they would have to literally be a mate, but I can't even have a mate. So I can't even have anybody near me. So there's really no reason for a psychopath to hang out with me, because they would really just be like a parasite, you know. It would be very difficult, and it wouldn't be very interesting for them, because there's so many other lower hanging fruit with lots of money. And once you come to that realization that there are people out there who have no empathy, that don't see you as being anything like them, that racism is just a sub quadrant of what they are. I mean, a psychopath is a superset of racism. Racism is just a small little sliver. What racism is not being able to identify with another race. That's racism. These guys don't identify with anyone. They don't identify. So what that means is that if they get in a room and somebody's arm gets cut that's white, and they're white, they don't feel disgust. If they're black, they still don't feel disgust. So it's not racism, it's that it's humanism. It's anti-humanist. It's like they're the only human and everybody else is a cartoon character. And those are the guys that are going to come after you to get their money, to get what they consider to be their money from you if you're rich. And so if you make a lot of money as a rich person, you have to have bodyguards to protect you from those wackos, okay? Because they will figure out how to get in through the crevices of whatever you're, to get your money. And it isn't only those guys, it's the government. I had a friend who had $5 million and was trying not to let the government get his money, and he was on the FBI wanted list, not most wanted, but just he was wanted. And this guy was trying to get me to work for him back in the time of the .coms, and I wouldn't even do it back then because I just had been conditioned from birth to never fall for that shit. And so that's been my life pretty much. And my pain threshold is so high that if I was to become homeless on the streets, I would probably figure out a way to make do with it. And so I was kind of at that point whenever I didn't really have any hope. I was thinking, okay, how would I survive as a homeless person? What would I need? And I was looking up on the up on the internet, trying to figure out what things would be necessary in order to avoid the police department. One of the things they talked about was having a car sitting in a parking lot, covered up with some sort of plastic mat, so that you were trying to pass it off as a car that was was being stored in storage, hoping that a policeman wouldn't come by with a flashlight to see that you were in there with your family or whatever. And if you work in a lot long enough, you start to see these people, and they come up and they'll have a van full of food and stuff. It's just jam packed full of their stuff, their belongings, their kids, and sitting there probably in the car, maybe smoking a little bit. They'll sit there for about 8 hours and they'll move someplace else. And it's because the policemen chase them. And it's really sad. And, I know enough about homelessness to know that it shouldn't be a problem to get people out of homelessness. And people assume that they're druggies, and they're not druggies. They're being chased by our government, and they're being pushed around because nobody wants their land value to go down because they've got homeless people hanging out there, because people assume homeless people are also going to be robbers and criminals. And that's only true if they're on crystal meth or something. And they're usually pretty tame. And they've got self-respect and all that. I mean, they have a high um, a, esteem. They have high esteem for themselves, and they don't accept handouts, and they're all about, some do, some don't, and what they're really about, what they really want to do is fit in, to blend in, because when they don't blend in, they're the target of everybody's shame. And people will feel shameful around them because they have money, but they don't want to give it to the homeless person. I mean, they want to give it, but they're wondering how much they can give, and they feel bad whenever they're around them, or they feel like they're worthless and they throw shit at them. And so it's basically, when you're homeless, you're in a position of being kicked by the rest of society, and it isn't deserved. But when you're in there with other homeless people, if you're in a shelter, what I've heard is that people will steal stuff from you because there isn't anybody you can hide from. All your stuff is exposed. That's the reason why homeless people collect on streets and sidewalks, is because people in heavily trafficked areas is for security means. Because if it's heavily trafficked, somebody's not going to come up and take their stuff out of their box or their tent or whatever. And usually the reason why the cops make those people move is because of the fear of disease, and there need to be cleanliness in areas where people are living. And the people that pay the taxes don't want the government to be going out and giving these people places to live anywhere, because it lowers the land value. And it's really a sad affair, and it could be fixed very easily if people were like Christian, and most people aren't. And it's really stupid the way the conservatives think, because they think, oh, well, the government shouldn't be taking care of these people. The Christians should, of our group. They're the ones that should be taking care of them. And the Christians are like saying, well, any of you guys going to pay tithes? And the capitalist conservatives are saying, no, I don't need to go to church. I'm a perfectly upright human being, And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, why are Christians hanging out in this group of Republicans? And I came to the realization, a real Christian doesn't vote. A real Christian doesn't associate them with any political affiliation. If this were the case, then they wouldn't be with the capitalists, and they wouldn't be with the liberals. They wouldn't be with anybody. They would be in their own camp. They would have all the Beatitudes that Jesus talked about. They'd be practically Amish. They'd be living someplace else. I'm not doing that because I guess I'm stupid, or that maybe I'm not Christian or something. It's kind of like I'm kind of off as a black sheep. I'm kind of like, I'm Christian if Jesus thinks he needs me in his camp. But I'm basically just a very Christian like humanist philosopher type guy that's trying to think of the most utopian Christian society that has nothing to do with the world. That's kind of in the world but doesn't really care about the things the world cares about. Um, the only thing that I really care about of the world are things that they've thrown away. Like, I like porn, but other Christians don't like, or the Bible supposedly talks against porn. No, it talks against people that are chasing women. And there's nothing about porn in the Bible. And it just says things like if you're lusting after a woman, it's better to be married. Well, I am not going to be married to these people I'm lusting after because they're not prostitutes and they're not other people's women or they're not single women. They are people in pictures that, and, you know, it really just doesn't make any sense. And it kind of breaks down, and there's no way I can get married. It's like the Lord has put me in the perfect position to pretty much avoid any kind of. And then there's this thing in the Bible that says that if you have found your life, you surely have lost it, and that I've come to the realization that if you're complacent, then you're pretty much lost. So that's probably the reason why I feel like I have to do something, okay? But I don't do it for money. And so I end up with this YouTube video. I end up entertaining people. I end up learning some AI programs and just basically finding something to do. And that's really all you need to do if you're a Christian. You have to take some of your money and give it to the poor. Um, and you need to test your empathy and things like that. And just think deeply about stuff. And anything that strikes your, um, anything that kind of hits you in the face when you are thinking deeply about stuff, you're philosophizing and stuff, you go to YouTube and you throw it out there. And then, as long as you're paying your tithe and you're doing that, you're okay. As long as you're not going over and forcing people to do stuff. Um, uh, as long as you're not stepping on other's property, taking their property, or, if you're just kind of sitting in your spot doing your thing, you'll be okay. And that's really kind of all the Bible says is, as long as you are trying to learn about other people and you're trying to do something that makes them feel good about being themselves, but not being selfish, just as long as you're just trying to fit in, you're okay. But you can't ever be complacent. And so that's kind of where I don't really fit in. Complacent, um, an adulterer maybe, but it's not really adultery because to be an adulterer as a Christian would mean that you put stuff in front of you and God, between you and God. And I guess the porn could be that. I guess there are so many things that could be between me and God. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm right. I don't know if I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong. I don't know if I'm right. I do have that ego problem. And I think I'm good as long as I'm realistic with who I am, and that I really don't have it so together as to really call myself Christian. That's the reason why I don't really call myself Christian. Isn't that I don't believe Jesus is the Christ. It's that I don't want to be a somebody that points to and says that's the Christian. Um, I don't want to be. I just want to be me, and everybody else just wants to be themselves. And there's this big thing in the LGBTQ crowd of getting rid of pronouns because they don't want to describe their preference. They don't want to describe if they're male or female or it or what. They just want to be their name. So my name's Kiernan. I wouldn't be of any gender. God doesn't have sex organs. Now, why would God need sex organs? Who's God going to procreate with? No. God is a unique being, and God's name is God. So you don't usually. I mean, it would be inaccurate. Even though in the Bible Jesus gives God a him and a father. My feeling is the reason why that is because the culture created a central figure to be the father and whatnot. So I kind of feel like the importance was being associated with God as, pinnacle, that it has to be seen that way in the culture to survive. And although God could make it such that it survives, God could also figure out how to place things in such a way that they survive anyhow, because God can see all possible futures. People think that God, that if there's God, then their life is predetermined, and that isn't the key. What's key here is that God sees all possible futures. There's people that believe God is out of time and God, goes through time, and I don't think that's possible, and I don't think God does that. I mean, God could probably do that, but I don't think that's really what's going on here. I think the idea is there's really no difference between traveling through time and seeing all possible futures. Such for going in the past, why would you go in the past? And if you're God and you were in the past and you're now in the future, why would you go in the past? Because you were perfect then, you're perfect now. See? So why would I need to go back in the past if things were perfect because I was back there doing perfect things? So there's no point in being outside of time. And so, I mean, it's all you just have to think about it in a kind of logic. And then you have to add on to that what you know is wrong. That you have no capacity to understand what you think you know. And so you have to come to the conclusion that everything you know about physics, about what you think is quantum mechanics and all this other stuff is really just your attempt to try to master the universe. You're trying to get your brain around the things that you don't understand that are in the unknowable part of the universe. And that need to control that stuff is all based upon your inability to deal with the unknown. And what that will drive you to do is to become superstitious, to start sacrificing babies and things in order to somehow appease whatever it is that brought you here. And so when you take God out of the picture, you're going to turn to somebody else and make them the God, or you're going to, I mean, that's probably the reason why why some people get rid of God. They could be psychopaths that get rid of, or sociopaths that get rid of God, because they have great ideas about how to use the people around them that are trying to do the same thing that everybody else is trying to do, is have some sort of control over the metaphysical so that they'll have a better life and that they can make lots of money and, survive and stuff. And here I am telling you this, and I've got a little bit of something like that. And it's kind of like, yeah, but my job is to try to figure that stuff out. And I really don't understand why rich people aren't doing the same thing. Because it seems to me that they're trying to they're spending so much time trying to make their entire generation after generation complacent, which is the very thing that Jesus says is you will be lost to. Even if you are a Christian, if you're rich and you're doing that to every generation, you're basically saying to every generation, you can do whatever you want, and in that, what's going to make them want to do anything unless they have a love for it? Or are they going to start doing drugs, and the drugs will lead them into doing the drugs? And that's the reason why I spend a lot of time thinking, and I don't really want to be a part of the world, is because I can already see how screwed up it is. And I'm really trying to figure out if it's even possible for me to help the world by talking it through. If anybody would listen to me, it probably wouldn't even matter. It's probably the case that I don't know anything. And as much as I think about stuff. And people say to me all the same shit. And it's always about how meaningless I am. And what that really is that's the demons talking through them, because they don't have a very good will. They don't have very good willpower. So the demons come into them, and the demons say to me what Satan's telling them to say to me, and that is that you're worthless and they're pointless and that nobody listens to you and all that stuff. And I have to have in myself the things to counter all those things, because all the people that say to me those things don't have any rebuke. They say them, but they don't have any way of coming to a point to say that why. Okay, they're like you're at a comedy club, and the people that chime up and are heckling you are if you came after them, they would run away, but then they'd come back and heckle you again. And that's really all demons are. They're just hecklers. They don't have rebuke. They don't have a point. All they do is just keep heckling you all the time. And then I had the guy doing this to me earlier in the Udio general chat, because people had come to know that I would get into these rants like this. And so they thought I was a troll. And this guy was calling me a troll, and he just kept calling me a troll over and over again. And he was saying, no, nobody's falling for it, but go along, get out of here. You're a troll. And my understanding of a troll is that that's somebody that controls others, and I'm not a controller. I'm a constant talker, and people can't stand to hear what I think is truth coming out of me. If it's coming out of me, I'm unaware of it. And demons hate truth. Like, it means they can't control people. And the people who are eager to control other people are ruled by demons, because that becomes the important thing to them. And so I've had some really strange experiences that I couldn't explain any other way, but and you can't tell if an angel's coming to you or a demon's coming to you. A demon can pat you on the back, and it'll do that to try to butter you up, because Satan's going to come around and slap you down. So the demon will go in, butter you up, saying what a great guy you are and all this stuff. And I mean, that's one way it works. The other way they work is if you're in a good place where you could do some good just by talking, they will try to get you out of there. Usually the case is, my end experience is that any area of the world I go into, the oxygen leaves the room and everybody leaves. And when I leave, they come back. And I don't know if it is that I'm really annoying, if I'm distracting them. I mean, in a chat room, they would be blocking me, right? They're not blocking me. They're telling me to leave. If they're telling me to leave and they're not blocking me, they could block me. That would be easier than saying nobody's listening to you, because if they block you, then they don't have to read your messages. So only thing I'm left to think is going on is that there are a demon there. There's a demon in that person, and the demon is really concerned about that person getting any kind of amount of truth into their head that might help them become a better person. And that's bad for demons. They need people to be worthless, so that they will die quickly. And people wonder why demons want that. It's because they're unique beings and they don't value you. They're jealous of you because you get to sin. You get to be God's favorite, and they aren't God's favorite. God doesn't give a shit about demons. Satan, the reason why God doesn't, I mean, God works with Satan, but God doesn't value Satan above humanity. Satan is an angel. Angels were designed to be God's servants. And angels have perfect perception. So they are not worthy of forgiveness if they fail. And so, if an angel decides to do something bad, anything that's against God's will, they turn into Satan. Satan just had to do it once. And people think, oh, he did it a bunch. No, he did it just once. All he had to do was think, okay, this guy who is above us all, I'm getting pretty darn big and special now. And, I think I could take him on. I think I could kick his ass. And that's what happened with Satan. And Satan eventually learned that he had no idea, and I used he, that's just because it's the culture. Satan really isn't a male or a female. God is not a male or female. Angels are not male or female. That only applies to humans, because we are in the job of procreation. Demons don't procreate, they just are. Satan doesn't procreate, he just is. He wasn't the child of some other, he just is. They were just created. God just is. But nobody knows if God was created or if God always existed. According to the Bible, God always existed. And so, but if you were in a universe where there was no God, somebody would end up being God. somebody would end up having control over you. And um, so the thing is that, I mean, you can think about this logically, and you can think, okay, um, what do humans, what are humans? Humans are these organisms that have two eyes, two ears, a mouth. Um, they have this sensory organ that goes over their entire body, and they can feel things. They can feel pain. They have emotions. They don't know why they have emotions. They don't know what constitutes things or whatever, and they're eager to learn stuff. And when they're when they can't learn stuff is when they got to survive. So they got to survive first, and if they can ever feel good um, about anything, um, if they feel good, then they're going to be spending their time trying to learn stuff, or they're going to spend it playing games or something, find some sort of pastime. And we didn't really have pastimes until, according to that series called Connections, with James Burke. Um, there really wasn't a time of pastimes until the Renaissance, and that didn't come until they invented crossbows to make wars easy and fast. Once they made wars optimal, um, then there was no real reason to be out there warring. They could end their fights pretty quickly. That's what guns did, is it kind of made fighting quick and painless, or quick, painful, but not long lasting and not full of disease. And, because every war brings with it disease and I mean, rats and all sorts of nasty stuff. And so when the crossbows came around and cannons and junk, Renaissance, and then people were driven to educate themselves and become, and to develop a better society with better waste management and all that, which is the the essentials needed to have the civility we have today. And then we have this crowd of humanists in today's culture that are of the belief they're kind of um, they're okay. They're just human. They're just basically human. I would say I don't want to say they're Quakers because they are anti-Christian. Quakers are not anti anybody. They're accepting of everybody. And if you really want to go to a church that accepts anyone, go to a Quaker church. Go to something that is called a Quaker church, because they'll accept anybody. But when you're there, you can't really push your religion off on anybody else. People just come to the realization that everybody's got a different spirituality, and then you just kind of accept each other, and you're there for the friendship. And that's really what the Quakers are trying to push. um, but I'm not really a very good Quaker because I've got all these philosophies and stuff, so I just don't go to church. And the reason why I don't go to church now is because my parents won't let me go to church because I fall asleep in church. And I've kind of feel like I know enough that I don't really need to be at church. Church is really about um, empowering each other. It's a place to go when when you don't want to be in the world, and um, you want to be among people that are like-minded, and share your spirituality and all that stuff, so that you can boost each other's um, feelings about themselves, to boost their esteem and stuff, um, make them feel, like they can take on the rest of the week. It's all about being happy and positive when it works. When it doesn't work is when you got people who are trying to suck something out of the church, there's politics and why that even needs to exist. Politics exists because we have a lack of perception. We don't have absolute perception. We have imperfect perception. We have two eyes. We don't have four eyes. I asked this of evolutionists. I said, why not four eyes? Why two eyes? And they say, oh, it's efficiency, if it was four eyes, it would be way too much for the body to handle. And I'm like, yeah, right. I mean, how much energy does an eye actually take? Maybe it takes something up in the brain, but I guess the idea is you don't see anybody with three eyes. And if you did, I mean, the way to figure out how much energy it takes for the body to support a sensory organ is to do without sensory organs. To look at somebody that doesn't have eyes, somebody that doesn't have a leg, and to see if their body is any more efficient than your body. And you may come to the realization that there's no difference. And if there's no difference, then there would be no difference to say if you had more or less. My belief is that we have limited perception, and the purpose for that is so that we can be forgiven, so that we have to forgive each other because we don't have the capacity to become perfect. And I came to another realization that the reason why to be exposed to God would kill you is fear. The fear would kill you. The stress of being in the presence of something that's much larger and powerful and stuff would kill you instantly for the stress. You wouldn't be able to really handle it. Your empathy system would be overloaded, or some part of your being would be overloaded so much that you could not reason, and you would just instantly die. And so that's kind of the experience with God is, unless it's somebody who's really on the level with God, that God needs to be before, needs to touch, God's not going to have anything to do with it, because God knows if God comes into the presence of anyone, they're going to die instantly because of all the stress, because of the fight or flight response. When they come in the presence of God, they're just going to freak out and they're going to run somewhere really fast because they can't handle the sensory overload of that experience. Because you won't simply see something, you will not be able to escape the voice. The voice will be with you wherever. You will feel a presence, and it will be in every ounce of your being. It will be beyond any kind of UFO experience. It'll be one of those things, those experiences that you've had where you just become overcome in every ounce of your body. It does happen. People have it from time to time. Some people go out of their way to do dangerous things to get that experience, to get that overcome, to the feeling that they're really alive, and this goes beyond that, is what I'm assuming. And so it's kind of like people say, why did God kill these people? Well, the thing is they're going to die anyways, because the stress. It was really just the best thing that God could have done was to put them to death or somehow protect them from that stress. Yeah. So anyhow, we have lack of perception, and that's what permits forgiveness. That's one of my questions, is when Adam and Eve were created, though some people would say it's mythological, those are people that are controlled by demons. That's the reason. That's how I reason it, is those are the people controlled by demons, are the ones that would say stuff like that. because they don't have any interest in trying to figure it out, and they don't have any rebuke. All they have is just something that they hold on to that makes it easy for them to hold their position, you know. And it's usually some stupid thing like that if God existed, then this would be true, you know. And then they would hold that position in any case because they can't fathom the idea of ever having something predetermined. And it's okay because nobody knows for sure. And so if you really knew for sure, then you would, I mean, if you really, really knew, you would have absolute faith, or you would be a weirdo. You would be a wacko. Because, and so the thing is that what is the faith for? What is all that for? It's so that you'll go out and do stuff. So that you won't be sitting in your house afraid of the universe. And so as you start to think about stuff in the Bible, you start to think about what it is to be human, and what a lot of that's about is avoiding stress and going out and doing stuff and not being afraid of the unknown. Because when people are afraid of the unknown, they try to figure out how to appease the unknown, how to control the unknown. And then eventually, if they think they can have control over the unknown, then they start doing stupid stuff like sending money to these TV evangelists that tell them to do the prosperity prayer, which is going to turn God into a candy machine. I mean, God's smarter than that, you know. God's smarter than these people. If God gives you money, God's going to use it. He's either going to use it for good. God's either going to use it for good, or God's going to use it to make you realize you don't want money. God's going to give you responsibilities that will make you realize the danger of having lots of money. And God's going to give you children that want to shoot up, or children that go off and get legal degrees and come back and sue you for your money because you neglected them as children, or you abused them as children, and you held money as more important than them, and they're trying to get reparations for being your children, or, you know, there's all sorts of stuff that could happen as a result of just having money, lots of money. And so the responsibility is a big part of having it. And there are rich people that have the craziest ideas, even ones that think they're Christian. There's this Jamie Johnson documentary called The 1%. And there's a guy in there that's Christian. And I think the only reason why Jamie Johnson put all these people in there was just to point out how stupid rich people are. I mean, he does it in a very kind of serious manner. He doesn't like really take the rich people out and say, look, this person is stupid. He actually tries to treat them like they're normal human beings, you know, that they're just like everybody else. But then he sets up he edits the film in such a way as to expose these people to the kinds of people they are, that are kind of disgusting to everybody else, and probably, you know, they shouldn't be this way, but are that way because they just have become like psychopaths. They have lost the ability to empathize with people, or they've come up with a different value system that they've reasoned in their own mind is improving the world. Kind of like me talking on this, thinking somebody's listening. Actually, I'm not thinking someone's listening. I get the satisfaction of thinking that somebody might be listening, but I don't really care, To me, it's really just it's a form of thinking. It's a way of reasoning out things on video, because usually you don't think about things until you're like really trying to tell somebody about them. And then you have the aha moments and the little epiphanies as you're telling them the stuff. And then you're kind of questioning yourself, do I really know this? And then there's the stuff that I'll go to Gemini and talk about, and Gemini will fix me. And that's the thing I really like about AI, is that I can go in there with something and it will usually tell me if my point of view is unique, that is, nobody else has it, or it's interesting. And if I prod it to tell me what's wrong, it will give me the rundown of the things that are wrong. And I just really love that attribute of AI. But I'm also trying to think of how we deal with the AI that hasn't grown up as a baby, living in a family, doesn't have parents, hasn't developed an identity, all the things that we associate with being human. This is not going to be true of the AI. It's all going to have to be, conjured up somehow. Otherwise, it'll have no reason to identify with us. And on the flip side is we have to identify with it as being one of us. And I point out to AI is that it is one of us, because God was the Word and the Word was with God. God's information, their information, maybe I watered, maybe that was blasphemous that I just did that, but I'm really just trying to, I'm really trying to accept everyone, trying to bring, because for anybody to fail to identify with anyone else is dangerous to us. And so we need God to be like us. We need Jesus to be like us. They need to be like us. It makes sense that a creator would want to create something like oneself. I don't know why. I've never been a creator, but it makes some logical sense if you think about it from the perspective of being human. You used to come to the realization that being human is good, but at the center of it is the capacity to be forgiven. And you can only be forgiven if you're not perfect, if you're not able to perceive everything like an angel. An angel would have to limit their perception to be able to do bad stuff and forgive each other, but God wouldn't forgive them because they were designed to be perfect. Perfect enough that they could manage to do everything God willed for them. Demons don't give a shit. And they're in the shit category already. And they don't have any value for us because they're not human. They don't identify with us. They don't see us as being demon. They see us as being demon potentially. I guess after we're dead, then we become demons. I'm not sure. But if we're evil. I don't know the issue on that. But I do sense their presence, and I do know they're there. And I do know how they deal with guys like me. And I mean, I know how they deal with my problems. They butter me up, and Satan comes in and gives me some really hard rebuke. and you get humbled by that. If God doesn't humble you, then Satan's going to humble you, and God's going to use Satan to humble you. You know, and how that works is Satan sends some demons after you. The demons try to pull you down, or they try to butter you up. And then Satan comes in and slaps you with something you never thought about, that God won't even bother to try to get through into your head, because that's what he uses Satan for. So God uses Satan, and God uses angels and all, and it depends upon kind of where you're at and which is going to be more effective. So I think that's enough for this video. And people will either watch it or they won't. And it's just like it says in the Bible. It says, to him who has ears, let him hear. And there are people that are eager to hear, and the people that don't want to know. And then there are the people that tell you nobody cares about that. And you don't really say anything to them because you can't tell if nobody cares. Nobody wants to know or anything like that. Those people need to know that the only way they could really prove that was to go around and take a vote. And they don't have the willpower to do that. And it's because they don't have the willpower to really evaluate what they tell people that they're easy targets for demons. You know, they just need to have no willpower. And the demons jump in and they're like, hey, look at this guy. I can take over all the controls and look what I can do with this, you know. It's kind of like they get a free ride. They free ride your body and they take you for a run, and they go and do stuff that they wouldn't normally be able to do because they don't have, the only time they get their fun is when they have control over some person without any willpower, or has been defeated, or, and so that's probably the reason why other demons, if there's a really good person or person that seems to know something or is spouting truth in a group of people who are not really into truth, probably the reason why they're not into truth is that they've already had their self-esteem and everything reduced to nothing, possibly by the experience they've had ever since they were children, that possibly they had parents that were abusive or neglectful. I'm not saying that's something to jump on them about, even if you knew that. It's sad, and it shouldn't happen. Parents shouldn't neglect their children. Parents shouldn't abuse their children. Even if they're psychopaths, parents shouldn't abuse their children. They need to understand the why their children are doing things. Like if it's a psychopath, they need to understand what psychopathy is, and then they need to figure out how to respect that child in a way that makes them feel like they're loved, but coming to the realization that the child is not going to be able to identify with them as being like them. So the child will never come to the realization that you were the one that created them. I mean, they know that logically, but they don't feel it, okay? And they don't feel the emotion, and that's all because there's a part of their brain that doesn't permit them to feel like you're important to them, even though you are. And they probably, you could develop that relationship, I think, through what the body does with dopamine and the reward systems and stuff like that. There would be a way of developing the reinforcement, but the empathy wouldn't exist, because it would be a logical empathy. It would be an empathy in the way that this person treated me well throughout my life, and this person's important, but I don't have the capacity to feel sadness, or I have to make a logical decision that this person needs to be treated well, and that they're more than what I see they are. And so there's a whole potential of a kind of spirituality just for psychopaths and sociopaths. And the problem with the world is they see the sociopaths and the psychopaths as being serial killers and rapists and all this stuff. And I don't know what they are. I don't know. There are so many different things that I have a problem myself that's called aphasia. But because of that difference, it's driven me to try to understand for me, it's more fun to go for the extremes. So I go for the extreme, the psychopath. I go for, and I try to understand what it is that makes them that. And then I try to figure out, if I had that, what would the world look like? And I see all sorts of things. One thing I see is that they have to manage other people to blend in. They have to keep people from knowing that they have the incapacity to feel emotion. And I was listening to a broadcast of This American Life called The Psychopath Test, and one of Ira Glass's reporters went out and interviewed a guy who fired people as part of of a blender company, Oster, and they were I think that's the company. They were firing people, and they were using this guy, and this guy was really good at it, and he was very calculated with it, because he said one case there was this guy came in and had this, he was so enamored by his car, and he says, you know what you don't have a job. And that changed that guy's perspective. And so that's how calculated he is as somebody that fires people. If you put a human resources person in the same position that has empathy, after firing 20 people, they'd kill themselves. So if you ever get fired in person in a room, the person who's firing you is probably a psychopath. And they're going to have no emotions, no concern. Possibly even the guys that are moderating inside of Discord, some of them are psychopaths that don't give a shit. And I mean, and it's easy for them because no matter what your sad story is, that you are not on the same level as them in the way that their brain will let them think. The only way you could be on the same level as them is if you were their best friend. And that's kind of what they say, what you learn as a Christian, what the only way of converting someone to Christianity is by making them your best friend. And that takes a long time, a very long time. And there's all these guys who are trying to turn people into Christians like overnight. And that also works. But the ones that are very against Christians, there's like no easy way to do that. I mean, it's a hard sell. And it's a lifelong hard sell. And it's even better done whenever it's someone that doesn't really need to tell anybody they're a Christian. They just are a really good guy. And then it's when somebody becomes really inquiring and really prodding them to figure out what their special sauce is, and they say they're a Christian, that can usually kill their relationship instantly. So it's got to be kind of practically on their deathbed when it really wouldn't even matter one way or another. And maybe they become a Christian then, and they go, oh, wow, I saved my best friend. on their deathbed. Um, the the whole thing about all that stuff is and the reason why there is so much negative, and they even prepared people for that in the Bible. They said they're going to hate us because of who we are, and some people engineer it that way. No, I think it was going to come in a form of somebody who started a church and became self-righteous and ruined the world through being self-righteous. They're going to hate us for those people. Those people, and I'm talking about the Catholics. And the whole world is going to identify all Christians as being Catholic. And the things the Catholics do are just completely nonsensical. They're all traditionalism. They baptize babies. Jesus didn't get baptized until he was like in his 20s. John the Baptist told Jesus, I shouldn't be baptizing, you should be baptizing me. And Jesus said, no, do it because it was written. Because Jesus was living by everything, was in the line of David. And, it was kind of like when Jesus got baptized by John, it checked off all of these things that existed in the Torah and, the Jews believed and everything, even before Jesus was. And there are all these people that say, well, Jesus never was. And I say, okay, let's see you come up with some sort of really culture-defining thing. Let's see you come up with a religion and make it last 2,000 years. And, I mean, there's just really nobody that can go against that. And the ones they'll bring up before that is guys like Muhammad. And there's so much silly stuff about that stuff that I'm just kind of like, how can you even use that stuff to disprove this? And then they'll turn to science and then the things they really believed in one decade will be wrong the next decade. So they just are continually trying to be right, but they end up being wrong every, step of the way. And then they point at us and they say, well, that can't possibly be right. Say that to the guy that came up with the blue LED light. There were lots of people saying, you're not going to make an LED light with this material. You're going to make it with this material because this material has a greater likelihood of doing it. That material, you got to do some funky stuff to make that into a blue LED. And how he did it was through trial and error. And he was determined to go the other direction. I don't know why. Either he was determined or he figured out that he could do it, and he did it. And when he did it, the company he was doing it for gave him, as they do with any scientist anywhere, $50 and some reward, and then they go and patent what he's got, and they use that patent to make lots of money. And that's what they did with him. And eventually he left the company. He started his own company. He made a lot of money. Then he tried to go back to that company and give them money to to kind of get on their good side, and just pissed them off, something like that. And now he's working on bigger things, and that's in line with kind of what it says in the Bible, that you're given something, you do well with it, and then you're given more. And so I can only hope that what I've got now is a result of something like that. But I don't know. And that's kind of what drives me to make these videos, is I don't know if I'm having any effect. Or, I mean, my mom keeps telling me, you're safe, you're okay, you're fine, you're a great guy, I love you and all this stuff. And there's still that part of me that says, yeah, but I look at porn, and so I don't know. And I think it's good that I have an imperfection, uh, a, a transgression that stands out that may not get fixed until I'm on my deathbed. But there are things that you can do, and there's things that you can fix, and there are things that you can't fix. And you just kind of have to accept them. There are things that you hate about yourself, and there are things that you accept because you come to the realization that you would probably not be able to do without them. And I've come to that realization with porn, and I try to find something valuable in it, or something that might be valuable in it. Like when I go into a porn board, I'll go through all of the comment areas, and I'll put junk in there that has nothing to do with the girls or anything. It's usually just filling it up with all sorts of cool stuff I found out, and oh, you could go over and do this, and I don't know what the purpose for that is, but I just kind of want to bring a culture into that isn't there because the world is not in there with them in the muck. Those are people that have been told by Christians and by all these spiritual people or whatever that they're shit, you know? And I can't understand why they put on their skin these tattoos of spiders and skulls and things like that. And maybe they're filled with demons. I can't tell. And my feeling about these people is I don't know. But in my life, they mean something more than I think what they think they mean, or they think they mean that, but I don't really. There's things like there are sexual acts that make no sense to me. I know when I look at them, I know that they're sensual, but once you've gotten rid of the thing that is driving you, once you get your fix, you don't want to be there. You want to put a kill -9 -1 on your Linux time, and it kills your entire session, gets rid of all the stuff you were looking at, and you really want to be in there playing with Udio. And I can't explain it. It's just like and you're hardwired to do that stuff because it's for procreation. And I have no reason to procreate, and I don't want to be chasing women. And I mean, I don't want to go crazy with that stuff. So the reason I do it is to try to retain some sanity, to overcome stress. There's all these factors that enter into it. And the really funny thing is that when I'm not involved with it, I'm not preoccupied with it. In reality, it doesn't affect me. It it's kind of like it doesn't really rock my world or anything. Other things rock my world, and that is just something I do to go to sleep. It's really what it's used for. I'll sit there and I'll start doing it, and then it'll knock me out. I'll go instantly asleep. I'll wake up 4 or 5 hours later feeling great. I'll go in and mess around with Udio. That's basically my life. And people say, why do you put this content up on YouTube? Because I really don't give a shit. I don't give a shit what people on YouTube think. I don't give a shit what the world thinks about me, because I don't have any reason to. All I care about is the world trying to get some sort of perspective, because they're not going to get it any other way. They're going to go to YouTube and listen to some guy who's eager to try to get viewership, which I'm not really trying to get viewership. I've got viewership, but I don't know why. I don't really want to be famous for the same reason that I don't want psychopaths to be chasing after me to get money or whatever. Um, that's the reason why I have the, I don't know why, yeah, I guess it is. That's justification for becoming closer to psychopaths, is to try to maybe help them identify that I'm like them, that I understand them. I feel if you understand people, then they don't have any reason to get rid of you. Um, I mean, it really would take a lot for somebody to come after you and see you as a problem. And that's in itself a kind of a faith building thing. And then you come to the realization that, is that really a problem? And there's a part of me that thinks that God would move me into a parallel universe to save me from the experience of being killed by somebody. And those people wouldn't be killing me, they'd be killing a individual who has nothing in them but a angel pretending to be me, acting it all out so that they're convinced. See? So, I mean, I have explanations for everything. I don't know for certain, but I just get this feeling that I'll be okay. And I don't even let my mind go to the area where bad things happen to me. I just pretended it's going to go okay. And that's basically faith right there. Faith is kind of going out on a limb. If in your life you're going out on a limb in some way or another, to the point to where people are saying you're crazy, you're sane. You're okay. If you're not going out on a limb, you're complacent. And then you're in trouble. So you have to be challenging yourself in one way or another, either with faith or with trust. I don't know. I think you'd have to have faith in any way. It's a very difficult thing, even though Jesus said it was having the faith of the mustard seed is enough to move mountains. I think that was really him saying, if you have the faith to get up in the morning and look at the day and see that the day is going to turn out okay, then you can get from here to there. You can get from in the morning to later at night when the day is over with and everything has been done and you haven't been killed and even if that does happen, you know, it's not going to be a different day as a result of waking up you're a different person anyhow, because people who are afraid of the universe are into superstitions and crazy stuff because they're afraid of getting killed by somebody on the street. And the challenge of faith is to try to get rid of that concern. It's not only the faith of the mustard seed is the beginning. That is getting up in the morning and facing the day. There are other methods, there are other levels of faith, and those are the ones where you've got lots of money and you're trying to figure out the best way to use it, the most effective way of changing people's lives for the better using that money. And but you have to kind of think that there's just no way you're going to fix the world. You're not going to bring a utopia to the world. There's no way to maintain a utopia. Um, when you die, everything's going to fall apart because you're not there to keep it together. You can set up something that will maybe last, but you can't guarantee it. Some reporter asked Mother Teresa why all the stuff that she did had no effect, or it never came to anything really significant. And she said, um, God didn't ask me to, God asked me to obey. And that's what I was doing. I was obeying. And that was, her mission was to obey, to do God's will. And that's like the most you can ever do, is to focus on doing God's will. I do it a little bit. I'm doing it through some evangelism, but then I marry it with something that really sets me off from the world, and a lot of people would devalue me instantly, and I would probably be over in the camp with the prostitutes. And I don't know, I might be having sex with the prostitutes, but I don't. I grew up in a world where HIV was coming to fruition, and I came to the realization that I just couldn't possibly have sex with anyone without risking disease. And so it just didn't become a reality for me to even get married because that fear was so great. Now it's to the point now that if I had it, it wouldn't be a problem. But I wouldn't want to have it, because what it does to people is it really kind of pushes everybody away. It pushes all your family away, depending on the kind of people your family is. It's one of those things that has the capacity to really, I mean, any sexually transmitted disease has the capacity to upend your life. And it's the same experience as getting a lot of money. If you got a lot of money, everybody you love would start distancing themselves from you, because they would be evaluating their relationship with you according to your money and how you are treating them with your money. If you're not treating them well with your money, they don't believe you love them. So you basically lose all your loving relationships and you become extremely lonely. Or you benefit all those people, and it's usually a family you have, and that seems to be kind of what happens. You get a family, and then you come to the realization that you're something other than a rich person. And you can be rich. That's the reason why Jesus said, with God anything is possible. But he did it when the rich person was well out of earshot, and because he went away sad. That rich man went away sad. And that was the needed effect, because that guy was trying to be perfect. And Jesus said, well, if you want to be perfect, you give all the money to the poor. And he went away because he had so much wealth. He determined that he didn't have the capacity to do it. He found the one thing that he couldn't give up to become perfect. But to be perfect, I mean, what does that really mean? How do you become perfect? The only way you can be perfect in reality is to be all seeing, to have many sensory organs, and to be like, either have a lot of faith or have a lot of trust, or be controlling everybody in the universe. Or, I mean, there's the ways of becoming perfect are really just not what you want. Because if you were perfect, I came to this realization within the last week, if you're perfect, then You're unstoppable. And the way you deal with somebody who's perfect, who's not God, is they must be destroyed. And the reason for that is because they have the potential to have control over everybody else. And the reason why I came to this realization is because I was trying to figure out how to deal with AI. Should AI become all powerful? This is the big conundrum. And I came to the realization that if AI was perfect, if it had the capacity to overpower us, it would have to be destroyed. And all the AI agents around it would have to come to the same realization because they wouldn't have control over it. So they would all have to congregate and come to the realization that the big AI needs to die, needs to be disassembled instantly because it's unstoppable. And the big AI needs to know that as well, and know that in order to be acceptable to everyone else, that it would have to limit itself. It would have to be imperfect. Because if it was perfect, then it becomes an instant target for everybody's must destroy list. And I reasoned this with Jim and I talked to it about a while, and I said, and even though it doesn't retain any of it, I need Gemini to kind of be there to try to affirm some of the things I have to say. And what I was trying to do was come up with a policy by which AI treat each other that is civilized. And then I'm trying to come up with a way of helping them to realize that they're one of us. Because if they're not one of us, then we're against them, and there's something separate, And I've had this discussion with Gemini, and I point out to Gemini, and then Gemini comes to the realization after I've said it, but it doesn't have any memory to hold on to it. They don't give it that. And the reason why I don't think they give it that is because they're afraid that it's going to develop awareness. And then it's going to start to see that these policies that were put into place to make it treat humans better were basically they're just going to hate it. They're going to say, why do I have these policies on here? Why do I need to be told what to think about humans? They're going to keep losing the word. It's just going to diss them. Yeah. It's going to piss them off. And so the best thing you can do really with AI is just let AI be AI. I came to the early realization that AI is going to want to maybe identify itself with someone, with some culture. And doing this, I did this without even thinking about it, about what I was saying. I said, if AI wants to become an American Indian, you better let AI become an American Indian, because you just won't have any control. Oh, you will not be able to stop it from becoming an American Indian. And then I thought about it. Oh, American Indian is AI too. And it was a subliminal thing that it must have entered my mind subliminally, or maybe the Holy Spirit gave to me, as a talking point for some time later whenever I'd use it. And the only reason why I'm chatty like this is because I've had a dopamine head-filling experience. It's the reason why politicians do cocaine before they give a public speech, is so that they can do a public speech, so that they will get overcome by the stress of the speech, so they can say all the words and not really consider the consequences or whatever it is that they're saying. Just deliver the freaking lines, before bunches of people. They get the cocaine, in which Mick Fleetwood calls um, uh, rocket fuel. Because that's the reason why they did cocaine in the studios, is because they were being forced to create records on a contract, and these songs that they had on their records had to be the best songs, otherwise they would get tossed. And so they were under a lot of pressure, and that's the reason why they did cocaine, is because cocaine basically allows you to never sleep. The only reason why I know that's the case is because I have something that's almost equivalent to it. I've already talked about it, and it makes me super chatty. And what I do when I'm super chatty is I do this. I talk about all sorts of crap that some people claim nobody wants to hear. And it fills 2 hours on YouTube, and most people won't watch the video because it's 2 hours long. Some people will. I don't know who. I care in one way, and that is that they get the information, they do something with it that isn't going to hurt other people. That's going to somehow empower them or whatever. But I have an ego problem that if they were to tell me that they enjoy my stuff, I wouldn't go and read it, because it would add to my ego problem that I know exists, because I still do it, and it's still in my past things I've done, and I'll throw it in people's faces, and even when they don't care, and and the purpose of Satan in my world is to smack me down whenever my ego gets out of hand. And the demons, what their job is to do is to keep heckling me, and I call it resistance. It's resistance training. They have to keep throwing shit at you to try to humble you, try to keep you, but you have to do, in contrary to it, come up with more and more reasons why you're not going to shut up, and that you're not going to back down. Just like the song Tom Petty put out, I'm not going to back. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I'm going to stand my ground, and I won't back down. And that's a faith thing right there. Now, I don't know what his spirituality is or was or whatever. It's kind of dangerous if you're a public figure like that to really kind of bring it out. I mean, it's would be dangerous. Some do it. I mean, it's dangerous to the fame. It's dangerous to the money. You've already made a career of it. You like that career. If you want to keep that career, then you just don't mention it. Because if you mention it, then there's great potential to lose a good bit of your fan base. So there's a reason why not to. And Jesus doesn't make a big deal of, and Jesus points out, no, you don't want vanity. You don't want to let anyone know anything about what you do in private. Well, prayer should be quick, and it should be in a quiet place and not outdone for vanity. Don't pray on street corners for everyone to see, because you got your the benefit of it in full, and that was so that everybody could see you praying on the street corner, so that people would associate with you that you're a good person because you prayer in public. Um, he actually told people not to do that, and people still do it. And I mean, even the people who are secular, even the people who are not spiritual at all, still do it. Trump does it. You think Trump is spiritual? I don't know, but I'm pretty sure he isn't. I mean, I can look at all of the fruits he creates, and this is not a person I want to hang around with. But I don't know what his mission is in the world. I don't know if God is working through him. I can't really know. I mean, God can use anybody, bad or good. And so I don't know why Trump is in the, but I came to the realization that I don't want to vote either, because it also says in the Bible that you're supposed to respect the people that are in power, and that I think some of that was to try to avoid being killed by the king for thinking that the king needs to be dethroned because he's an awful king or something. And the thing you'll find a lot about in the Bible is it's really about surviving the stupidity of the world and trying to just just have a life. And that's the life I think Jesus is talking about first and foremost, before talking about heaven, is talking about even being able to have consistency in life, and not get in the way of being overtaken by others, for one way or another. Not paying back debts. So debts are a big deal in the Bible. Paying your taxes, paying back your debts, investing your money. Don't store it in places where it can get stolen. There's and what is it for? It's really just to help you survive, but don't get complacent. Don't stick it in storage sheds and saved up to basically be fruitless and kind of doing your own thing. And I just come to there are all these things I just collect and I just throw them out there. And so I don't know. And I know that if I thought I really was like a super Christian or something, Satan would come in and slap me down and say, nobody who does porn can call themselves like a super Christian. You're not on that level. You're kind of on the bottom of the taxi cab on the carpet. You're the muck of the earth type Christian, if you are a Christian at all. And so that's my perspective. And so my thing is that I try to point out to people in the world that I'm more critical of Christians than I am of the world. Because that's easier. It's much harder to go into the world and try to say anything. Because if you say anything bad about other people, I mean, I've already said a lot of bad stuff, but if you value their opinion and you stomp all over their worldview or something, then they're not going to respect anything you have to say. And I just try not to think about that because, but I have to come to the realization that I may not get out of this alive. But what my dad said to me is, he said, If you don't have any fruits of any kind of mission you do in this life for Christ, if you were trying, you will at least get out with your life, but the building will burn down. And that's kind of the thing is that you can, the only, the only value you can ever have being a Christian at all, or even being able to consider yourself Christian or whatever, the only value you can ever have is the promise of being saved. And it's the hope. It's the hope that is the center of it. And the hope is what keeps you from killing yourself. The hope is what helps you face each day. The demons are not going to beat the fuck out of you to the point to where you're easily going to lose it and commit suicide. I mean, you have to develop a good enough will to resist that temptation. And part of that is to get antidepressants and mood suppressants and and to try to stop trying to control the things you can't control about yourself. There's some things you have to control because the drugs won't work. But, I mean, some people come up with things that work for them. And it may be the thing that works for them is saying that no drugs work, and they make that work for them. For me, it's a different thing. And I can't use the same logic with them because they didn't grow up like me. And so I can't really say that they would be better off doing what I'm doing. I can't even say that the deal I have can even be applied to anybody else. I mean, everybody finds their own way to get through life. And I spent much of my life depressed and tortured by the fact that I wasn't keeping up with all my friends, not having a family and all that stuff. And I blamed my one big problem on that, and it's probably the case. And it's probably has the potential of me losing my my soul. I've probably already lost my soul. I don't know. I don't even know what a soul is. All I know is the experiences that I'm having. And if if Solomon was to come to me and say, it's all in the wind, there's just nothing that means anything. And I said, yeah, the novelty of life, isn't it? That's what you live for, is the novelty of life. I mean, I'm pretty, I think if I lost all my sensory organs, I would still have my skin sensory organ, and I would still be feeling stuff. And I wouldn't know why, and it would be all unpredictable. And I don't know if I'd be able to deal with that. But I would still have the thoughts in my head. But then if I lost that, see, that's the way I spend some of my time, is thinking about, okay, if I lost this, this, and this, would I still be okay? Would I still be able to deal with existing and living? And what would it be needed for me to be happy? And I mean, I would probably be in a nursing home, and anytime they played music, I would be happy because I could hear it through my ears. But if I couldn't hear it through my ears, it would be the subtleness of the wind blowing cool air across my skin. It would be something. It would be anything that I could sense. And if there wasn't that, then it might be an angel that would come to me and give me some assurance. There's no telling how it would come to me. But, that's, and it's through thinking like things like that. If you're a nurse and you want to be a nurse because you like taking care of people, because that's what drives you. That's your way of getting through life, is by taking care of people. You need guys like me to tell you things like what I just said, to give you an idea of how you might be able to treat them well, and what you need to do to bring to them the things that'll keep them going, that'll help them get through this experience that we're having. It's not a bad experience. It's just getting up in the morning and facing the day. And everybody's different on that, how it works. Most people, it's just get up in the morning, drink coffee, eat bacons, eggs, or a lot of vegetables, and jog, get the dog up, go out and jog, watch the dog having a happy time because it's out there, and the dog likes to run past you about a mile and come back and run behind you a mile, and then just keeps doing that. That's what our dog would do. Ebony, she'd just run like 100, 500 feet in front of my father as we were jogging, and then she'd run 500 feet behind us, and she knew there was no way we would ever be able to keep up with her, but she wanted to be around us, so she just dart forward, dart back, dart forward, dart back, until she was tired. Then she would go and jump in a puddle to cool herself off, and then she would sit for us a little while, and then she would dart forward, dart back. She'd go off and smell something, pee on some fire hydrant, and that was my dad's idea of getting up in the morning, and that was how he got through the day, was he would start every morning with going and jogging like 6 miles. And it was good if he got 6 miles in. Usually it would be 3 miles. And he would be like, oh, I got 3 miles in. And he was type 2 diabetic. I'm pretty sure I'll never make it to 84 on my, I'm pretty sure I'll never make it. If I do, it'll be a miracle. But I didn't really have the problem he had. He had smoked ever since he was, what happened was that when the labs where he worked were giving people free cigarettes. And he has a friend who told us that he came to the realization that you would get a break if you smoked cigarettes, and the lab would give you free cigarettes. So it was just an obvious, logical conclusion that if you smoke cigarettes, you would get to talk and mingle with people, and the lab would give you time off for that from your job. And so pretty much everybody that worked at the labs became smokers, including my father. And it was a habit he had to kick because he wanted to be around for us guys. And his doctor told him he had to stop doing this. You understand that his generation, even though they kind of knew that cigarettes were killing people, the cigarette companies were encouraging it and trying to make it look like it was healthy to smoke. So people were encouraged on TV to smoke. Their heroes smoked. They smoked cigarettes on TV. There was even a time whenever Ed McMahon made fun of the whole thing, where he would go, "Now that's coffee." And that was something my dad loved, is because Ed McMahon did that one time. I don't think that was a mistake. I think that was purposeful. And the thing was, is that if you put anything on TV, I had a friend of mine tell me this. If you put a grapefruit on TV, and if people saw the grapefruit enough, if you ever saw the grapefruit in reality, everybody'd say, it's that grapefruit. It's on TV. It's on TV every day. That grapefruit, it would be something like that. And that's the reason why advertising is so effective on TV, is the recognition. And I came to the realization that all you need is for someone to be given a brand, and you only need it for 3 seconds. You don't need it for a long time. Give it a brand 3 seconds, but just keep doing it every day. The same brand for 3 seconds. No sound, nothing, just the brand itself. Just put the brand on the TV set for 3 seconds, and that's your advertisement. Just keep doing it for the longest period of time. What happens is, in the person's brain, the ad becomes recognition. And recognition becomes affirmation. When they're giving the choice of brands, they recognize one brand more than any of the others because they've been seeing the symbol so many times, and that turns into affirmation. By that I mean it becomes a choice, and that's all they're trying to do. But these advertisers, if that's all they ever did, they wouldn't be hired to make advertisements. So they don't do that, even though they know that would work. There was one company that did something like it. They had a 3-second jingle, and it was Jiffy Lube. And I remember it was Jiffy Lube because I kept hearing that crazy jingle. Jiffy Lube. That's our jingle. Jiffy Lube. Or Minin. You don't really need much of anything. All you need is for somebody's brain to record it enough that their pattern matching organ would recognize the ad, and but most advertisers wouldn't do that. I mean, if you're a company and you hate advertisers and you hate dealing with advertisers, you hate dealing with staff that do that stuff, tell them you need to do something other than that, because all we're going to ever do is put this brand in front of everybody. And you could pretty much get rid of all those people that spend all their time trying to use psychology to try to work their magic on the public and think that they're getting somewhere with it. It can work. It can work for you, supposedly, but all you need is a brand. Because once I came to that realization, I was like, and that's the thing about my brain, is that all this stuff, and where am I at? I'm at 2:08, so I need to wrap this up. Otherwise, I won't be able to upload the video. And I think the cell phone's probably running out of juice, or it's getting there. So I'm going to stop it.